Hello and welcome to our webinar YA announcements. I'm Maggie Reagan, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by typing the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing these materials, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a button for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the captions icon on the toolbar mentioned before. From there, you can select show or hide captions from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting caption settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any forms of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Abigail Miles, Sales and Marketing Associate at Camcat Books, Emily Day, Associate Manager, Library Marketing at Macmillan, and Morgan Perry, Brand Manager of Editorial for Skybound Entertainment. First up, we'll hear from Abigail Miles. Abigail is the Sales and Marketing Associate at Camcat Books. She helps promote books through social media, newsletter, advertisements, and more. She is also an in-house proofreader. Abigail holds a BA in Creative Writing and a BA in Mathematics from Appalachian State University. Thanks so much for joining us, Abigail.
Hi, thank you. So as I was just introduced, I'm Abigail Miles. I'm the Sales and Marketing Associate at Camcat Books, and I'm very excited to be sharing some of our new and upcoming YA titles with all of you. Next slide. So first, a bit of a recap for some previously published titles. So these are some of our spring YA fiction that I wanted to share really quick. So we have Hunterland by Dana Clare, which is a YA paranormal title that is very in line with things like Supernatural or Teen Wolf or Vampire Diaries. So people who love those kinds of shows will love Hunterland. And we also have Queen's Catacombs by Jordan H. Bartlett, which is the second book in the Frame Chronicles series, the sequel to Contest of Queens, the YA fantasy series. And both of these books are available now in hardcover as well as large print paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Next slide. And then these are some titles that are also already available, and they have also just recently come out in trade paperback as well. So we have Imagining Elsewhere by Sarah Huzzi, which is a YA paranormal title that takes place in the 80s, and that we say is essentially Mean Girls meets The Twilight Zone. So it's a lot of fun. We also have The Man or the Monster by Amna Qureshi, which is the second book in the Margzar Trials duology. It's the sequel to The Lady or the Lion. And this is a YA historical romance duology that takes place in a Pakistan-inspired fantasy country. And then the last paperback we had come out this summer is Jester by Brielle D. Porter, which is a YA fantasy title that takes place in a fantastical Las Vegas setting, and it's a lot of fun. So all three of these titles are now available in trade paperback as well as all other formats. Next slide. And then some more paperbacks. These are all coming out in the fall in paperback, but they're available in all other formats currently. So there's Curse and Done by Brandy June, which is the second book in the Goldspun duology, the sequel to Goldspun. This is a YA fantasy duology that is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling centered around the Miller's Daughter character. We also have The Darker the Skies by Brian Prosek, which is the second book in the Earth United series, the sequel to The Brighter the Stars. This is a YA sci-fi series that's great for people who love things like The Expanse or just really classic sci-fi books. And finally, for paperbacks, we have Armadas in the Mist by Christian Claver, which is the third and final book in the Empire of the House of Thorns series. So it follows Shadows over London and Justice at Sea. And the series takes place in an alternate Victorian England where fairies have invaded and have declared war on the humans. So it's a YA fantasy series. And again, all of these books are coming out very soon in trade paperback, but are available in all other formats now. Next slide. And then to get into some of our more recent and upcoming titles, we have Our Vengeful Souls by Christine McManus. This is a YA fantasy title that came out in June. And this one is a lot of fun. It is a villain origin story for the Sea Witch character from the Little Mermaid fairy tale with a Greek mythology twist to it. So in Our Vengeful Souls, Soraya, the main character, is a mermaid and the daughter of Triton who winds up stripped of her magic and banished from the sea, cursed so that if she ever returns to the sea, she will be turned into a horrible sea monster. Soraya washes up on the shores of Atlantis and winds up finding a place there among the Atlantean army. So this book is great for so many reasons, one of which being, of course, its appeal to those of us, like myself, who really love fairy tale retellings and new takes on classic tales. It's also really wonderful for Soraya's character herself, as she is a very strong female protagonist with a driven personality and fearless determination that carries her through the whole book. So Our Vengeful Souls is a powerful and magic-infused tale for this sea witch character in a Greek-inspired setting that casts a fresh light on a classic tale that we all know and love, giving a new voice to this tragic character. Next. Right, next we have Vaulting Through Time by Nancy McCabe. This is YA science fiction. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. Vaulting Through Time follows 16-year-old Elizabeth Arlington as she finds herself catapulting through time, through both her own family history and through great moments in gymnastics history in order to solve the mystery of her own birth. So the catalyst for the story at the beginning is Elizabeth, the main character, starting to suspect that her mother hasn't been entirely honest to her about her birth and about her upbringing. So Elizabeth starts to suspect that she might be adopted and sets off on a journey to uncover the truth about herself and about her family, which sends her catapulting back in time in order to find out the truth of this. So Vaulting Through Time is a book that centers around themes of family and loss and very much a search for identity at its core, which makes it at once a super fun sci-fi read as well as a heartwarming exploration of all of those really great themes. Right, next slide. The next title we have is Summer People by Sarah Hosey, which is a YA mystery that just came out last week, actually. So Summer People follows 17-year-old Christmas Miller as her summer is turned upside down after she discovers a body floating face down in her community's lake. Christmas must face the fact that all is not as it seems in her beloved community as she sets out to uncover the truth of what is really happening in her town. The author of Summer People, Sarah Hosey, took inspiration in writing the character of Christmas Miller, who is a character with ADHD, from Sarah's own discovery of her ADHD as an adult. So Summer People looks at how Christmas's ADHD impacts all areas of her life, from her relationships with friends and family to how she tackles these growing mysteries in her town. Summer People also addresses issues of pollution and environmental concerns as Christmas is investigating the growing algae problem in her town's lake, compounded against the other mysteries in her town. So Christmas is forced to ask hard questions of the people around her in her investigation, including her own parents, as the issue of this algae progresses, compounded against everything else that's happening in her community. So this is a book about finding your voice and speaking up, even in the most trying of circumstances. And it got a really great Kirkus review recently. You can see a blurb of it up on the screen there. Next slide. And then our next title is New Eden by Ruth Fox. This is YA science fiction. It is the second book in the ARC trilogy. So it's the sequel to Under the Heavens, which came out last year and received pretty wide critical acclaim. So New Eden comes out at the end of the month, so just a couple of weeks. And this series takes place in a near future. I think it's around the year 2078, in which the Earth has become basically uninhabitable for a lot of animals, particularly sea life. So in the first book, we see as our main character, Kim Tang is issued with the task of carrying the last of Earth's whales across the galaxy in a giant space vessel in search of a new home with hopefully unpolluted oceans where the whales can live. So this second book, New Eden, sees Kim continuing this journey, this mission to bring the last of Earth's whales to a new home, only for a rogue computer program to sabotage their ship at the last minute, sending it crashing out of the sky and toward uncharted land. But this is only the beginning of the problems for Kim and her whales and the rest of their crew. So this series as a whole, but also New Eden in particular, is a very high stakes sci-fi book full of thrilling escapades that is very reminiscent of movies such as The Passenger or Silent Running or Interstellar, where you have these eerie sci-fi elements that just enhance the creepiness of the whole book, where you don't completely know what's going to happen around every turn. There's also a budding love story woven into the mix, which is a nice breather between thrilling moments. And so all around, New Eden is a really great second installment in this sci-fi trilogy. Next slide. Our next title is The Confession of Hemingway Jones by Kathleen Hannon. This is also YA science fiction. It comes out in September. So we call this one a YA modern day Frankenstein story, which makes it a lot of fun. So this book starts off with Hemingway Jones, their main character. He's a 17-year-old boy who accidentally causes the death of his father. After this, Hemingway decides to try and achieve the impossible and bring his dad back from the dead. So against all odds, perhaps Hemingway is able to achieve this using the technologies and materials available at the research facility where he interns. He does manage to achieve the impossible and bring his dad back to life. However, the result is not quite human, and Hemingway and his father soon learn that this is only the beginning of their journey, as there are many people who would do anything to get the information of how Hemingway managed to do this, how he managed to bring someone back to life. So this is a book that is action-packed all the way through, fast-paced. It never slows down for a second for the reader. But it's also a story that centers around themes of redemption, particularly for Hemingway himself. So the story itself begins at the very start with Hemingway addressing the reader, telling them that the story doesn't have a happy ending and telling them that he does not see himself as the good guy in the story. Hemingway very much blames himself for everything that happens in the course of the book. And so we see him wrestling with that and trying to reconcile with his actions. And we get to witness just how far he's willing to go in order to protect and save the people that he loves. This book also addresses themes around morality and ethics in science, particularly in questions of life and death and questions of what it means to be a human, which altogether makes this an equal parts moving and action-driven sci-fi story. Next slide. This one is Girl on Trial by Kathleen Fine, which is a YA thriller that comes out in October. Girl on Trial features a 16-year-old girl named Emily Keller who is on trial for manslaughter. So Emily is being tried with causing the deaths of a family of 4. The structure of this one is really unique as it oscillates back and forth between sections where we get to see Emily on trial itself. So we see as witnesses are brought to the stand and evidence is produced, trying to build a picture of what happened the night that this family died. But between those chapters, we flash back in time, seeing the months and weeks leading up to this incident where the family died, in which we get to learn more about Emily herself, and we get to learn more about her home life and her upbringing, and we get to see the choices that she made that wound up getting her tangled in the mix of what happened to this family. And ultimately, by the end, we do learn our answers. So this is a book that we are saying is mostly for older teens. So we're recommending for ages 15 and up, particularly because it addresses many serious topics for teens, including peer pressure, as well as drug and alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, and self-harm. It also takes a really deep look at the negative ramifications of social media, particularly for teenagers in high school, and how that can build on the social pressures to make people perhaps make decisions they wouldn't otherwise choose for themselves, as we see in particular for Emily as she dives into this story. But ultimately, Girl on Trial is a book that focuses on what it means to stay true to yourself, even in the midst of those rising social pressures. Next slide. And this is our last title I have to share with you today. It is Blades Day by Jackie Johnson. This is a YA Western that comes out in November. Blades Day is another really fun one. This is one we're saying is essentially The Magnificent Seven meets The Departed. So it's a Western title that takes place in the 1800s against a backdrop of the Mexican-American War in a small settlement in Colorado called Blades Day. So in this book, a ruthless, violent gang has infiltrated this small town of Blades Day, and it falls upon the shoulders of our main character, a 17-year-old girl named Theo Creed, to try and dismantle this gang and save her town. So Theo decides to disguise herself as a boy in order to infiltrate this gang and try to take them apart from the inside out. This book is a lot of fun for many reasons, one of which is definitely Theo's character herself. She is such a cunning, clever character that is always 5 steps ahead of anyone, including the reader, as she tries to enact this deadly con. This book is also great for the enemies to lovers romance that is mixed into it, where Theo finds herself completely against her will, starting to fall for one of the young men that is part of this gang, which makes her start to question her loyalties as well as her own heart. So this is just a really fast-paced, addictive story that is set against a unique Western backdrop. Next slide. So that's the last of our titles. Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to email me. I'm Abigail at camcatpublishing.com if you have any questions about these titles. And you can sign up for our newsletter there to learn more about all of our books and more. And you can find us on Edelweiss, where also all of these titles are located. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Abigail. And we'll now hear from Emily Day. Emily is the Associate Manager in Library Marketing at Macmillan. After receiving her Master's of Arts degree in Children's Literature from Simmons University in Boston, she joined the Macmillan Library team in 2017 and has been there ever since. She reads mostly YA and loves contemporary fiction and fairy tale retellings, but will occasionally spice things up with an adult psychological thriller or romance. Emily was proud to be named a Publishers Weekly Star Watch honoree in 2019. Thanks so much for being here today, Emily.
Thank you, Maggie. Hi, everybody. As Maggie said, I'm Emily Day, and I'm so excited to share some upcoming YA titles with you all. But first, a couple of things. Next slide. If you are interested in downloading eGalleys or being whitelisted, these are the instructions for doing that. And if this slide goes by too fast and you don't have time, these instructions are also on our website at macmillanlibrary.com. Next slide. And next, if you want to hang out with myself and my amazing colleagues and hear us talk about upcoming books weekly, pretty much weekly, please join us for Happy Half Hour on Mondays. This is a virtual book talking event that takes place almost every Monday, where my 3 colleagues and I chat about books and we ask each other questions, and it's just an all-around good time. So definitely join us for that. Okay, now on to the books. Next slide. First up is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the highly anticipated conclusion to the duology that began with the #1 New York Times bestseller, Divine Rivals. Following the big cliffhanger ending of Divine Rivals, readers will be dying to know what happens to Iris and Roman. Ruthless Vows picks up right where Divine Rivals left off and will leave readers breathless to the very end. Iris and Roman's love story is compelling, heartbreaking, and will make you believe in finding your one great love as the two of them risk their hearts and futures to change the tides of the war. Next. The Hunting Moon by Susan Dennard. This is the sequel to The Luminaries. Winnie Wednesday has gotten everything she thought she wanted. She's a hunter, she's been welcomed back into the Luminaries, and she's become a local celebrity. But as bodies and secrets pile up around her, Winnie finds herself questioning what it means to be a true Wednesday and a true luminary, and also where her fierce-hearted loyalties might ultimately have to lie. Accessible, original, and darkly enchanting, and full of sizzling romantic tension, this series is sure to appeal to both the current and upcoming generations of YA readers. Next slide. Artifacts of an Ex by Jennifer Chen. Jenny Han meets Emma Lord in this charming debut romance where two teens have a meet-cute at an art show, except she just broke up with her boyfriend, and he's tired of being a rebound. With wonderfully vivid writing and funny dialogue, Jennifer Chen brings to life swoon-worthy characters to root for. Smart, messy, complicated heroines you can't help but want great things for, and love interests who seem too good to be true, even while having their own insecurities. Next slide. Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. Heartstopper meets A Knight's Tale in this queer medieval rom-com debut about love, friendship, and being brave enough to change the course of history. Arthur and Gwendolyn have been betrothed to each other since birth, but the problem is they can't stand each other. When they're forced to spend the summer together before their wedding, they very quickly each discover, accidentally, that the other is actually gay, and they decide to be allies rather than enemies. This is chock full of sword fighting, found family, and romantic shenanigans destined to make readers fall in love. Next slide. Godly Heathens by H.E. Edgman, the first book in a YA contemporary fantasy duology in which a non-binary trans teen, Jem, finds out they're a reincarnated god from another world. As their worlds collide and the past catches up with the present, Jem will discover that everyone has something to hide. In addition to trans, queer, and BIPOC representation, this duology opener also has chronic and mental illness representation, making this a story that many teens will be able to relate to. Next slide. This Cursed Light by Emily Thede, the sequel to This Vicious Grace, which was the epic romance hailed as one of the best fantasies of the year. 6 months after the events of the first book, Alessa is ready to live happily ever after with Dante, her former bodyguard. But Dante is convinced that their troubles with the gods aren't over quite yet. In this sequel, Dante and Alessa face their most daunting challenge yet when the gods demand they prove their worth by choosing the ultimate sacrifice to save humanity once and for all. Next slide. Our Cursed Love by Julie Abe. A magical 51st Dates meets Love and Gelato set in Tokyo, Japan, about destiny, the impact of the choices we make, and the magic of true love, even when the person you're in love with is your very best friend. Our Cursed Love is perfect for fans of cute, sweet rom-coms with a touch of magic, and the charms and spells give this story an added whimsy that will make it stand out. Next slide. Arya Khanna's Bollywood Moment by Arushi Avachat. Save the Date meets Never Have I Ever in this sparkling debut rom-com about a high school senior whose life suddenly gets a Bollywood spin when her sister gets engaged. Structured like a Bollywood film, including an entertaining intermission, Arya Khanna's Bollywood Moment will make you swoon, laugh, cry, think, and quite possibly make you get up and dance. Reminiscent of that by YA heavy hitters like Sarah Dessen and Morgan Matson, Arushi Avachat's writing sparkles with humor and warmth as she brings to life the complicated intimacy of family, friends, and new loves. Next slide. The Getaway List by Emma Lord. For all my fellow watchers of The Summer I Turned Pretty, this one is for you. This is The Summer I Turned Pretty meets People We Meet on Vacation, and it's a sparkling and timeless romance from New York Times bestselling author Emma Lord. When Riley arrives in New York City for the summer and reconnects with her childhood best friend Tom, she isn't sure what to expect. But as they work through the delightfully chaotic items on their getaway list, which is the list of all the adventures they've wanted to do since Tom moved away, Riley learns that sometimes the biggest adventure is not one you take, but one you feel in your heart. Inescapably romantic and brimming with Emma Lord's signature cheer, The Getaway List is an uplifting and romantic read that will settle into your heart and never leave. Next slide. A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Saft. In this romantic fantasy of manners, a magical dressmaker commissioned for a royal wedding finds herself embroiled in scandal when a gossip columnist draws attention to her undeniable chemistry with the groom. Transporting readers to a Regency England-inspired fantasy world, A Fragile Enchantment is a sweeping romance threaded with intrigue, unforgettable characters, and a love story for the ages. Next slide. Infinity Alchemist by Kaysen Callender. World Fantasy and National Book Award winner Kaysen Callender brings us their explosively original YA fantasy debut. A spellbinding dark academia novel about a quest that leads 3 young alchemists toward unexpected love and unimaginable power. With their signature prowess and unbridled creativity, acclaimed author Kaysen Callender turns their formidable skill to young adult fantasy for the first time. Next slide. Even If It Breaks Your Heart by Erin Hahn, a heart-buckling ride of a romance by beloved author Erin Hahn about 2 teens finding out that sometimes the hardest part of discovering what you want is getting the courage to pursue it. Winnie and Case couldn't be more different, but Case can't help but be inspired by Winnie's badly hidden passion for horseback riding and competition. And there's something about Case that makes Winnie want to try grasping onto a dream for herself, whether that's a shot at the rodeo trophy, the annoyingly handsome rancher's son who won't leave her alone, or maybe both. Case and Winnie's relationship is magnetic, and their chemistry will make you fall in love right alongside them. Readers will be rooting for Winnie and Case as they help each other figure out some dreams are worth chasing down, even if you think they'll break your heart. Next slide. This Day Changes Everything by Edward Underhill. This is Dash and Lily meets Ferris Bueller's Day Off in this whirlwind rom-com about 2 queer teens who spend one life-changing day together lost in New York City. At the heart of this book are 2 teens who are not from big coastal cities, wrestling with their queerness and transness, where they fit in, and how to make their own joy, even when the outside world tells them that they take up too much space. This is a big-hearted, joyful story that makes space for queer and trans teens to feel safe and heard. Next slide. Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, a dangerously romantic Scarlet Pimpernel-inspired fantasy with post-revolution witches from acclaimed author Kristen Ciccarelli. Heartless Hunter is the thrilling start to a romantic fantasy duology where the only thing more treacherous than being a witch is falling in love, featuring the ultimate enemies to lovers romance between a witch and a witch hunter, where a dangerous courtship ensues as they try to outwit one another and fall hard despite the consequences. Next slide. The Bad Ones by Melissa Albert. New York Times bestselling author Melissa Albert returns with The Bad Ones, a supernatural horror novel about 4 mysterious disappearances in a town haunted by a sinister magical history. An arresting crossover horror fantasy threaded with dark magic, The Bad Ones is a poison pen love letter to semi-toxic best friendship, the occult power of childhood play and artistic creation, and the razor-thin line between make-believe and belief. I've read this one, and I've read a lot of these, but this one is terrifying. Recommend reading with the lights on. Okay, next slide. Hope Ablaze by Sarah Mughal Rana. All My Rage meets the Poet X in this electric debut that combines powerful prose and verse to explore a Muslim teen finding her voice in a post-9/11 America. Told through alternating prose and verse sections and with a touch of magic, Sarah Mughal Rana's Hope Ablaze is a gripping, heartbreaking, often funny, and ultimately uplifting. In her unforgettable exploration of poetry, society, and self, Rana not only celebrates the Islamic faith and Pakistani culture, but simultaneously confronts racism and Islamophobia with unflinching bravery. Next slide. Ellie Haycock is Totally Normal by Gretchen Schreiber. This is The Breakfast Club meets Perks of Being a Wallflower, and it's a big-hearted debut by Gretchen Schreiber. Ellie Haycock has always separated her life into two sections, Ellie at home and Ellie at the hospital. It's not hard for her to choose which of the two she prefers. When Ellie is forced to return to the hospital for an extended stay, she worries about her two lives colliding, and all she wants is to get back home as soon as possible. But this stay is different. Ellie becomes close with a group of friends, including Ryan, a first-timer who's still optimistic about the doctors that Ellie stopped trusting years ago. Despite their differences, she can't seem to keep him out of her head. Ellie's life has never been normal, but maybe between these fast friendships and falling in love, she can find her own version of normal. Next slide. The Other Lola by Ripley Jones. The sequel to Ripley Jones's unforgettable YA thriller, Missing Clarissa, The Other Lola is about what happens when the people you love the most are the people you can trust the least. With Cam and Blair still struggling with the aftermath of their first mystery, and with new secrets swirling between them, the stakes are higher than ever in this can't-miss sequel. Next slide. In the Orbit of You by Ashley Shoemaker is a YA story of enduring love from an acclaimed author, where a personality test reunites two friends and makes them second-guess their careful plans. In the Orbit of You is a story about the enduring and changing nature of friendship, of the strange struggle between who you are and who you want to be, and of finding your voice after trauma. Next slide. The Perfect Guy Doesn't Exist by Sophie Gonzalez. A fanfic writer brings her favorite TV character to life in this friends to enemies to lovers novel full of joy and laughter. With the heart and humor of I Kissed Shara Wheeler, the queer joy and hijinks of She Drives Me Crazy, and the romantic ode to fanfic of Fangirl and Geekerella, plus the collision of fantasy and reality like in Disney's Enchanted, The Perfect Guy Doesn't Exist will immediately pull readers in and not let go. Next slide. Draw Down the Moon by PC and Kristen Cast. New York Times bestsellers PC Cast and Kristen Cast return with a new duology set in a dark and magical world filled with incredible danger and irresistible romance. Featuring a magic school, elementals, a mysterious death, and irresistible romance, plus a fantastic story and characters you can't help but root for, this duology is sure to be a hit. Next slide. The Black Girl Survives in this one, edited by Desiree S. Evans and Ceresia J. Fennell, a YA anthology of horror stories centering Black girls who battle monsters, both human and supernatural, and who survive to the end. Celebrating a new generation of best-selling and acclaimed Black writers, The Black Girl Survives in this one makes space for Black girls in horror. 15 chilling and thought-provoking stories place Black girls front and center as heroes and survivors who slay monsters, battle spirits, and face down death. Prepared to be terrified and left breathless by the pieces in this anthology, featuring stories by Monica Brashears, Charlotte Nicole Davis, L.L. McKinney, Brittany Morris, and more. Next slide. Canto Contigo by Johnny Garza Villa. When a mariachi star transfers schools, he expects to be handed his new group's lead vocalist spot. But what he gets instead is a tenacious current lead with a very familiar, very kissable face. Canto Contigo is a love letter to Mexican culture, family, and legacy, the people who shape us, and allowing ourselves to forge our own path. At its heart, this is a glorious rivals to lovers romance about finding the one who challenges you in the most extraordinary ways. Next slide. And my last book for today, Blood Justice by Terry J. Benton Walkers. The sequel to Terry J. Benton Walkers' smash hit debut, Blood Debts, continues the story of powerful magical families, intergenerational curses, and deadly drama in New Orleans. Secrets and poison, dark magic, and new gods, welcome back to New Orleans. Next slide. All right, that is it from me. Thank you so much for listening, and my email is on that screen as well as all the other places you can find us online. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. And finally, we'll hear from Morgan Perry. Morgan is the brand manager of editorial for Skybound Entertainment, where she collaborates in overseeing the sales and marketing strategy, publicity, and event management for the company's comic book and graphic novel releases, including the stealth announcement of Skybound's partnership with Hasbro with the launch of Void Rivals #1 by Robert Kirkman and Lorenzo De Felici. You can find Morgan on Twitter at GEAUXTA, where she talks about her love for manga and anime, in addition to sharing her publishing insights. Close us out, Morgan.
All right, thank you guys so much. As said, my name is Morgan Perry, brand manager of editorial for Skybound Entertainment. We've joined the YA book list before, but in case you aren't familiar with us, we are a comics publisher best known for The Walking Dead and Invincible, written by Robert Kirkman, as well as our YA and middle grade graphic novel line Skybound Comet. And I'm here to share all of the goodness that we've got headed your way for all of your graphic novel readers. Next slide. We can go to the next slide. Got some cool animations going on. I'm going to be kicking off the presentation with a series I absolutely am stoked about to see in the launch in November, so let's roll that trailer.
Ready. Go.
Next slide. That was Arcade Kings by Dylan Burnett. Next slide. It is an awesome, awesome setted book in a kind of town that is more shonen anime based and based around like fighter games. So next slide. Arcade Kings is the first creator-owned series written and illustrated by Dylan Burnett, who has illustrated Ant-Man and Cosmic Ghost Rider for Marvel, as well as one of my favorite comic series ever, Weavers. So when I heard that he was bringing his first creator-owned series to Skybound, and it was pulling inspiration from games that I love, like Street Fighter and Skullgirls, as well as bringing in all the really great shonen anime vibes, I was already amped to throw down on this series. And then I saw the interior pages, and I was one hit KO'd and in love. So next slide. Arcade Kings is about Joe, a mysterious new face in Infinity City that has suddenly become the hottest player at the Roundhouse Arcade. But Joe's secret past has caught up with him when a new challenger rolls into town, which forces Joe to combo his powers with a joystick, his fists, and his fighting family legacy. Next slide. Dylan's love of anime and manga shine through on each and every page, which made finding the appropriate comp titles for this series in the North American market a little difficult because there really isn't anything like Arcade Kings on the shelves. And yet, I'm recommending Arcade Kings to readers who are fans of Invincible, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and are looking for something new to look forward to, especially with that new anime for Scott Pilgrim versus the World coming out and all those people coming to get those books in too. So next slide. Next up, we have Heart Attack. Next slide. Superpowers and social justice. Next slide. Denied their human rights by the government because of their metaphysical abilities, Charlie and Jill discover their instant attraction unlocks a power of mass destruction in the dystopian romance from Sean Kittleson, one of the story writers behind AAA video games such as Injustice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11, and Eric Zadowatsi, illustrator of Son of Kal-El from DC Comics. Next slide. While you may recognize Heart Attack from its 2020 release, the new graphic novel releasing in October will collect the previously released 6 issues as well as 6 all-new chapters to conclude Charlie and Jill's epic romance. Next slide. Inspired by works such as Beautiful Trouble, A Toolbox for Revolution by Andrew Boyd, and the collective works of Douglas Rushkoff, Heart Attack is a social justice dystopian romance for readers 16 and up who are fans of Love Everlasting, 7 Secrets, and 8 Billion Genies. Next slide. In addition to our Skybound originals, which may be geared more towards older teens, 2023 has been a big year for Skybound Comet, both in terms of books that have already been released as well as those that are upcoming. So next slide. Explore new worlds with Skybound Comet. Next slide. First up, let's follow it down. Sean Kelly McKeever, the Eisner Award-winning writer of Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, and Alexandra Tefengi, the Eisner Award-winning artist of The Good Asian, collect their critically acclaimed YA sci-fi series in a single volume for the first time. Next slide. We could just go through the next couple of slides until we hit the trailer. Space teens with big feelings. Who doesn't love that? Next slide. There we go. Welcome to the Outpost, the smallest town in the universe. The people there work the land, go to the fights every Friday night, and tuck their children into bed. But the Outpost is no place for dreams or ambition. To survive is enough, and as Alea and her friends graduate into adulthood under the artificial sky of a faulty biome, on a frozen world that's never meant to support human life, a tragedy strikes, the inexplicable suicide of her friend Steven. Alea begins her search for the reasons why, and what she discovers will upend her world forever. Next slide. While a devastating storm has trapped the outpost under ice, threatening the entire community's survival, the planning team ventures out into the frost to save the town, while Alea and her friends discover a great mystery that's buried beneath the surface. Next slide. Outpost Zero, the complete collection, is for fans of Paper Girls on a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden, and this was our pact, and it is available now. Next slide. Yep. Next slide for Sea Serpent's Air. Embrace the darkness inside of you. Next slide. Our high fantasy on the high seas series continues in Sea Serpent's Air Book 2, Black Wave. Next slide. Continuing immediately from the devastating events of Book 1's, Alea has set sail with her mother's pirate crew and is dead set on revenge as she starts to embrace the dark and dangerous inner demons that are inside of her. Next slide. Returning next month from Margaret Scott and Pablo Tunica, Sea Serpent's Air Book 2 Black Wave is a must-read for fans of Nimona, Demon in the Wood, and Teen Titans Raven. Next slide. We're here with Clementine Book 2. Next slide. Let's roll that trailer. To celebrate the 20th anniversary of The Walking Dead, Tilly Walden's Clementine trilogy returns this October. Clementine, Ricka, and Olivia, having escaped from the hordes on the mountain, have found themselves on a remote island off the coast of Canada. Next slide. Here they meet the enigmatic Dr. Morrow for the first time. Clementine begins to experience what it is to truly like to have a normal life. Finally, with her friends her own age, a mentor to guide her, and possibly a new girlfriend, could the island provide Clementine with the safety to finally stop running, and is it safe to fall in love? Next slide. Whether or not you're a fan of The Walking Dead, Tilly Walden has managed to deliver a coming-of-age young adult series about found family, embracing love, and growing up in the apocalypse. And we're excited to bring book 2 to readers, especially if they're looking for some new graphic novel series to get them through the wait until The Last of Us Season 2. Next slide. Next up, we have Ava's Demon. Have you made the pact? Let's roll that trailer. For fans of Lore Olympus and Teen Titans Raven, the game-changing multimedia webcomic and Kickstarter sensation Ava's Demon from Michelle Fuss is available in physical form for the first time from Skybound Comet. Ava's Demon is a multi-volume sci-fi fantasy series about a shy girl named Ava who makes a pact with an ancient alien queen named Rathia who seeks revenge against the most powerful being in the universe, Titan. Think an intergalactic Jeff Bezos. And in exchange for a better life, Ava must help Rathia find her warriors and yeet Titan from existence. Next slide. Joining her on this mission is Maggie, Ava's former best friend turned frenemy, Odin, a brooding teen with a mysterious past, and Gil, a dedicated follower of Titan. Unbeknownst to Ava, all three of them are hiding their own inner demons, so Rathia's warriors might be closer than they think. Next slide. At its core, Ava's Demon is a story about identity, self-worth, and seizing your destiny, beautifully illustrated through complicated cast of characters that readers will immediately find themselves in. Next slide. We do have a little bit of announcement. So for our last book, this is an announcement that we were going to have for this year, or at least this week, but it did get pushed back, so you guys are hearing it first. We have Ava's Demon Book 2 Aftermath. Next slide. This is the next installment in the Ava's Demon book series, so let's roll that extended trailer for our previous Kickstarter campaign. Arriving in summer of 2024, Ava's Demon continues after another incredibly successful Kickstarter campaign, which shot Ava's Demon to the #1 most funded webcomics campaign on the platform. Next slide. After the events of Book 1 with Titan's HQ in absolute ruins, Ava's newfound powers sow division and straight up terror amongst the group, and Ava begins to question her decisions, tearing herself apart as Michelle explores depression and identity within the character. Next slide. Book 2 also unravels the mystery of Odin's past and his motives. Who is Pedri? What happened to Odin's homeworld and his younger sister? And what larger role does his older brother play in all of it? Next slide. And that's all I got, friends. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you would like previews of anything or any of the trailer files, please feel free to email me. I believe they have my email, but it's mperry@skybound.com. Thank you guys so much. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Morgan, and a big thank you to all of today's wonderful presenters. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, a certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, like those you see here. We have a special announcement introducing Booklist Book Club, a year-long partnership with your favorite publishers. Each month, Booklist will showcase book club picks and supporting materials from a different publisher, offering a wide range of genres and age groups to fit the needs of any book discussion group. Mark your calendars for September, when we'll reveal the first selection from HarperCollins children's books. To find out more information, scan the QR code on this slide or visit our website. Recently, ALA's Office for Intellectual Freedom reported 1,269 demands to censor library books and resources in 2022, the highest number of attempted book bans since ALA began compiling data about censorship in libraries more than 20 years ago. Join the Unite Against Book Bans campaign to help protect the freedom to read and to empower readers everywhere. Visit uniteagainstbookbans.org for more information, resources to donate, and more. And remember that you can utilize Booklist to support your library's collection development choices with reviews backed by the ALA. We have a special webinar subscription offer, and don't forget that your subscription dollars help ALA advocate on behalf of libraries, assisting those facing an unprecedented number of book challenges. Email us at info@booklistonline.com for more information. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and one more huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsors, Camcat Books, Macmillan, and Skybound Comet. This concludes today's webinar, and we'll see you next time.